Okay, live. We can start. Good afternoon, viewers. Welcome you all to this afternoon session on thoracic cancer. I am Dr. Tanveer Abdul Majid, consultant surgical oncologist with thoracic, GI, and HPV specialty. We would be talking about thoracic cancer, that is lung and esophageal cancer. Since we have paucity of time, the sessions may be brief for some small points which would be addressed subsequently. We all know that the cancer burden is rising in the world, and it was postulated and it has come out to be true that there is an epidemiology of cancer by 2020, and which is really true. And 2018 Globocon data said 18 million new cases of cancer all over the world, and out of that about 50% of the cancers were seen in our Asian continent. So we have this magnitude of a problem which is rising day by day. Although there has been so much innovations in the technology and treatment modalities over a period of time, the outcome of these cancers have improved drastically. So if we first discuss about lung cancer is actually the most common cause of death among men and women. It is ranked highest maximum number of cases after prostate cancer in the Western population. In India, it ranks about 4th in number. Now, lung cancer, in spite of the stage, has got dismal prognosis, and as the presentation of lung cancer is usually at a very advanced stage. Now we come to the etiology or the cause of lung cancer. What are the predisposing factors for lung cancer? And the most important predisposing factor for lung cancer is smoking. We come across people who are chronic smokers, and it has been analyzed that people who smoke more than 10 packs of cigarettes per year, those patients are more prone to develop lung cancer. However, lung cancer is also common among non-smokers. Now people keep on asking me questions saying that we are non-smokers and still we got lung cancer. So we have an entity called as environmental tobacco smoke, which amounts for 24% of risk of lung cancers. So people who are non-smokers, because of inhalation of environmental tobacco smoke, are actually prone, that is, they are 24% more prone for developing lung cancer. The third important is asbestos. People working in industries or dealing with asbestos are more prone for lung cancer. There's an important gas which is called as radon. So women are more prone to household radon radiation and environmental radiation for men and women both. They are important cause of lung cancer. We used to, when I was a student of pathology, I used to read that even a chronic tuberculous scar is actually a cause of lung cancer. Some patients have got familial disposition for lung cancer in the form of altered and genetic aberrations, the details of which we are not going to go at this juncture. Now coming to a special type, what are the types of lung cancer? You have two types of lung cancer. One is a non-small cell lung cancer, which actually is the vast majority, and the other entity is small cell lung cancer, which is totally a different entity which we'll not be addressing in this session. Now non-small cell lung cancer is actually adenocarcinoma and squamous cell carcinoma make up two groups, of which adenocarcinoma is more common form of lung cancer. Symptomatology of lung cancer. How does a patient come to you with lung cancer? We all know that over years of practice, I have been seeing patients, lung cancer patients, coming in an advanced stage. Early stage lung cancer is actually not very common. Most common presentation which we see is an effusion which has been treated as tuberculosis over a period of time, and then they realize, the treating clinicians realize that this is not responding to any anti-tuberculous treatment and things like that, and they land up with us and they are diagnosed subsequently with lung cancer. However, 25% of patients are asymptomatic and they can be picked up on routine screening. Like we were actually in the COVID times, we were screening patients for COVID pneumonia. the CORAD score for corona's involvement of the lung, and quite a few times we have picked up asymptomatic patients of lung cancer. So that also is one of our presentation. The most common presentation is cough, hemoptysis, breathlessness, chest pain. Some patients present with pathological bone fractures. So, a lot of patients who are locally advanced may present with hoarseness of voice, dysphagia, that is difficulty in swallowing fluid or food. Some patients also presented with brain occupying, space occupying lesion. So these are the important presentations of lung cancer. A very rare entity which is also possible to be, which is actually seen in clinical practice, is presentation with distension of our neck veins as superior vena cava syndrome. However, this SVC syndrome is most commonly seen in mediastinal lymphomas rather than lung cancer. Now coming to the investigations, what are the investigations you do for a lung cancer patient once a patient walks into you? First and foremost is an X-ray chest, PA view and a lateral view both. Why a PA view, which will show you the site of the lesion, lateral view which will actually localize. So chest X-ray, a PA and lateral view. The second most important investigation what we do for lung cancer is a contrast enhanced CT scan of thorax and upper abdomen. Why upper abdomen? Because lung cancer metastasized to the adrenals, so you should have an upper abdominal cut where you have visualized the adrenals and they are not enlarged. So for lung cancer you have a CT scan which is a contrast CT scan, which is both lung window and a mediastinal window. Lung window you will be able to see the exact location, which are the fissures are involved or not, which segments are involved, whereas the mediastinal window will tell you the status of the nodes, the hilar nodes, the mediastinal nodes, ipsilateral mediastinal and contralateral mediastinal nodes. So also it may tell you information, give you information regarding involvement of superior vena cava or pulmonary artery or pulmonary veins, either superior pulmonary vein or inferior pulmonary vein. Now the other most important investigations which is actually revolutionized the treatment of lung cancer is a whole body PET CT scan. It has been actually seen and evaluated that with the use of PET CT scan, 18% of the patients who were actually supposed to be operated ended up getting either neoadjuvant therapy or some form of palliative therapy because PET CT picked up distant metastasis. Now these three things is important as far as imaging is concerned. The other most important, to characterize what type of lung cancer it is, you need to have a biopsy. Now what are the methods of biopsy? Important investigation is a bronchoscopy. It is an outpatient procedure done under transtracheal anesthesia using 4% lignocaine, where you can visualize the whole tracheobronchial tree and you can get an adequate biopsy. The biopsy should be adequate, which can be for histology as well as for molecular markers. Now this is possible only if the lesions are centrally placed. However, if the lesions are peripherally placed and then they are not amenable for bronchoscopy, such patients end up getting a CT guided core needle biopsy for a tissue diagnosis. The second most important investigations, when if at all you have seen the patient, evaluated and got a biopsy and it is a operable lung cancer, you need to do MRI of the brain, which may pick up brain lesions. The other most important investigations based on which you decide the surgical treatment of these lung cancers is pulmonary function test and echocardiogram. Now coming to pulmonary function test, which I will talk to you in detail once I am talking about resections. The pulmonary function test I will tell you when I am talking about resections of lung cancer. After all these investigations which I have mentioned, we will be able to accurately stage the disease. At the same time, we would be able to devise a treatment protocol for these patients. Now, when you do a biopsy, we need to do molecular markers in the form of PDLI, ALK4, CROS and EGFR receptors, because a lot of treatment evolution has come place with monoclonal antibodies against PDLI receptors, against IL-4 receptors, which has actually changed the entire paradigm of treatment of lung cancer. Now we have a patient who is actually evaluated. We can stage the disease. So for all practical purpose, I'm not going to go into the details. We have stage 1 disease which is localized to the lung with a single node which is interlobar or a hilar node. In those patients, then you have stage 2 and 3 lung cancer, and then you have stage 4 lung cancer. By and large, for stage 1 lung cancer, treatment is surgery. If it is a peripherally placed lesion, the surgery would be lobectomy. If it is a centrally placed lesion, very rarely you may end up doing a pneumonectomy. Now, pulmonary function test plays an important role. At the same time, mediastinoscopy. All patients who are to undergo lung cancer surgery are actually subjected to evaluation of a mediastinum, invasive mediastinoscopy and a biopsy, and to rule out the mediastinum. If there are nodes positive in the mediastinum, these patients are not operated. They go for neoadjuvant treatment or chemoradiation based on the localized stage of the disease. So for pulmonary function test, if there is something called as FEV1, forced expiratory volume at 1 second, at force FEV1, and if that is more than 60%, and if the diffusion lung capacity, that is DELCO, is more than 60%, these patients undergo surgery. Surgery could be either video assisted thoracic surgery or robotic assisted thoracic surgery or an open lung surgery based, or a single incision video assisted, that is called as single incision VATS. So that can depend, and you can perform a lobectomy with a mediastinal dissection. Now patients who are actually advanced stage of the disease, now these patients normally go for neoadjuvant treatment. You have 2A, 2B, you have 3A, 3B and 3C. Normally patients with a very limited subpopulation of 3B will undergo surgery, and patients of very limited patients of 2A may undergo upfront surgery. So neoadjuvant treatment in the form of chemotherapy, neoadjuvant chemotherapy is a standard of care, and these patients are reassessed after chemotherapy and then subjected to surgery. Now patients with advanced stage, that is third stage, 3B and 3C, normally they undergo chemoradiation. And patients who are metastatic, that is stage 4 lung cancer, normally undergo palliative chemotherapy, or based on molecular markers. For stage 3B and for stage 3C, they can also PDLI inhibitors like durvalumab can be actually used. At the same time, they can also, the 4th stage patients can also be subjected to other form of targeted therapy which is very commonly used. That includes erlotinib and geftinib. Patients, there is a very important exception to the rule. A 4th stage disease with a single metastatic lesion in the brain and the adrenals. The adrenal and the brain are treated simultaneously either by an SBRT or surgery for the brain lesion or adrenalectomy, and based on the merit of primary TNM staging of the localized lung tumor, the patients can be treated accordingly. That is, a lobectomy can be performed for a T2N1 lesion with a single metastatic disease. However, patients with malignant pleural effusion, it is best to put in an intercostal tube, and once the intercostal tube drainage comes down, these patients should undergo pleurodesis, either talc or use of tetracycline, and then put on palliative chemotherapy. And this is one important thing I would like to mention, that in spite of the best available treatment, there have been recent reforms in the form of durvalumab for locally advanced or early metastatic lung cancers. The results are good and they are showing promising results. Now coming to important thing is prevention of lung cancer. How do you prevent? I'm not going to go in very details of everything. Prevention is first and foremost is stopping smoking. Restrict yourself to smoking cut down on the cigarettes, stop smoking. It has been said that once the cigarette smoking stops, over a period of 10 years, it takes for the risk to normalize. That is one. Second thing is fresh fruit, vegetables, use of exercise, protection from environmental pollution, use of an N95 mask, actually safeguarding oneself from chemical pollutants, environmental pollution and diesel fumes, and this will go a long way in preventing lung cancer. Now we come to the second topic in thoracic cancers, that is esophageal cancer. What is esophagus? Esophagus is a food pipe which connects the throat to the stomach, and it forms a passage for transmission of food once a person eats a food. Esophageal cancer is the sixth most common cancer worldwide, and it is used to be associated with a very high mortality, about 10% treatment surgical related mortality initially. However, in the recent times, with the advent of staplers, improvement in surgical techniques, improvement in the intensive care unit, and in excessive use of high generation antibiotics based on the culture report, and dedicated esophageal thoracic surgery units, the mortality has come down to less than 4%. Now we come at the etiological factors, the cause for esophageal cancer. Again, as common for lung cancer, for esophageal cancer, alcohol and smoking are the two important causes of esophageal cancer. The other important thing is use of pickled food, salted food, and then nitrosamines in the food which you get, the packaged foods which you get, and the processed meats you eat. Then the other important thing is chronic gastroesophageal reflux disease, obesity, and gastroesophageal reflux disease. These are the important causes of esophageal cancer. There's another important cause, is a congenital cause, where there is congenital tylosis et palmaris and plantaris, where there is a congenital deficiency of all these, and these actually causes esophageal cancer. It has been also noticed that excessive consumption of very hot liquids is also a causal factor for carcinoma esophagus. Esophageal cancers are actually of two types. We have squamous cancers and we have adenocancers. Squamous cancers are arising from the post-cricoid juncture to the gastroesophageal junction. However, near the stomach with the lower part, you have adenocarcinomas. Based on the exact location, they have been classified into Sievert's type 1, type 2 and 3. Type 1 is within 5 centimeters from the gastroesophageal junction, above the gastroesophageal junction, and type 2 is 2 centimeters on either side of the GE junction, and type 3 is GE junction and over the lower part of the proximal stomach. Now we have talked about the etiology, we have talked about the types of esophageal cancers. Now symptomatology, how they present. Most important is progressive dysphagia to solids, and over a period of time the patient is not able to swallow liquids is one of the most common presentation. Loss of weight, loss of appetite is associated with these symptoms. The other thing is gastroesophageal reflux disease causing recurrent acidity, hyperacidity, burping, flatulence, abdominal pain. These are all important characteristics of clinical presentation of esophageal cancers. Then advanced stage cancers can present as hoarseness of voice because of nodal disease in the mediastinum, and so also persistent cough may actually signify the development of a tracheoesophageal fistula. Now this is common symptomatology of esophageal cancer. Investigation wise, most important is an upper GI endoscopy. Now patients I have seen in OPD where they have been treated by self-medication using proton pump inhibitor. They walk up to a clinical medical store and say कि acidity हो गई है, दवाई दे दो, and they go on taking, and we are missing something, and there is disease silently progressing, and these patients are over a period of time come to a very advanced stage and then they present to us. So it is actually important to realize that persistent acidity or symptoms of regurgitation, one has to get evaluated by an endoscopy. And endoscopy is so most important is an endoscopy. It's an outpatient procedure. It will also show you the extent of the lesion. You can get a biopsy. You can visualize the whole of stomach. You can also see Barrett's esophagus. Barrett's esophagus itself is a precursor of esophageal cancer. And over long standing, the reflux of acid keeps on changing the esophageal mucosa to columnar mucosa of the stomach, and this is actually a cause of esophageal cancer. Then one more important thing I forgot is recently it has been postulated that human papilloma virus could be a cause. However, robust data is still not evident. So these are the important things. Once you get an endoscopy, you get a biopsy. And then the other important investigations is a contrast enhanced CT scan and a whole body PET scan, which is important to actually stage the disease completely. Now you have an esophageal cancer which lies in the upper part, which is in close relation with the windpipe, that is trachea. These areas you may have to do a bronchoscopy to see for invasion of tracheal wall, whether they are invaded or not. Or the other important thing is an endoscopic ultrasound, which may actually show you the invasion of tracheobronchial tree. Lower esophageal cancer normally invade the aorta, and if there is on a CT scan, if there is a very bulky large disease, it is worthwhile doing an endoscopic ultrasound for aortic valve involvement. So you may see the aorta valve wall, and you may say invasion by the tumors. The other thing is it also lies in close proximity to the left atrium, the right atrium and the pericardium, which can be actually picked up very nicely on an EUS. Once you have done the PET CT scan, you have done all the staging investigations, by and large esophageal cancer, T1A undergoes surgery that is transthoracic esophagectomy, or which can be actually done using a video assisted or a VATS mobilization, or it could be open or it could be robotic esophagectomy. In patients who don't have very good pulmonary function test, these patients normally undergo transhiatal esophagectomy. Now you have T1B beyond up to T4A, bulky mediastinal. Personally I operate up to T2N0. However, T2N1 and T3N0, T4AN1, T4AN0, these are locally advanced, and I prefer to give them neoadjuvant therapy in the form of paclitaxel. If it is a squamous cancer, if the patient is young, strong enough, I would like to recommend them for a cross protocol of chemoradiation and then subsequently evaluate for surgery. However, if it is a gastroesophageal junction is adenocarcinoma, either it is Siebert type 1, 2 or 3 adenocarcinoma, neoadjuvant therapy in the form of FLOT regime is preferable, as it has shown very robust evidence of good survival. I have seen patients myself, my own patients, who have undergone complete response. So, however, if the patients are T4B and beyond, these patients undergo radical chemoradiation. You may get an esophageal cancer which presents with a tracheoesophageal fistula where patient is coughing. These patients undergo endobronchial tracheal stenting, which is a covered stent, and an esophageal stent. Now we have esophageal cancer who may have dysphagia. Those patients can be stented if it is a metastatic disease, and they can be subjected, if the performance status is good, they can be actually subjected to chemotherapy. Now the best thing about esophageal cancer is actually screening endoscopy. It's not practiced in our country. However, in Japan, you have data for stomach cancer where they picked up very early gastric cancer, and there the survival rates are very high, up to 90%, 95% for early gastric cancer. So it is always worthwhile not to omit endoscopy if your symptoms of dyspepsia are persisting. The other thing is prevention of esophageal cancer is restrict intake of alcohol and tobacco in any form, exercise which is recommended, fresh fruit and vegetables because they have free radical scavengers which actually help stabilize the old cells. The other thing is early treatment and referral to a major center, which actually goes away beyond in preventing mortality. Maintain good weight, that is reduction in weight, so there is little incidence of gastroesophageal reflux disease. Decrease intake of aerated waters, as there has been evidence enough for aerated waters as a cause of esophageal adenocarcinoma. In spite of everything, if esophageal cancer or lung cancer, if it is detected early, the survival is good. However, in the near future, we are looking at molecular markers for treatment of lung cancer, and they have been showing promising results, and I just hope that in the near future, some good things crop up for esophageal cancer also. And I thank you all for a patient hearing. No need to end now. End.